going to let Mark take it away from here. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Rachel, how are you today? You all right?
Doing great.
And I'm so excited to be joined by Kim. Hey, Kim, how are you doing?
Oh, doing well as well.
Awesome. And I'm a Brit, and in Britain, we always ask about the weather. I've just looked up on my phone. It's 82.4 Fahrenheit here today. What's your weather like?
Well, here in Cincinnati, it's about 75 degrees and sunny, so pretty perfect.
Hey, so I win. What about you, Kim?
Yeah, it's 70 degrees, sun shining. Can't ask for much better.
It's too hot for me. I'm gonna have to stay in. That's why I've come here to be in the aircon. Welcome and thanks for looking after us today, both of you. It's great to have you all along, and thanks, Kim, for helping to organise this as we've gone through the preparation for this. And yeah, and if you've got any questions, Kim and Rachel are going to be looking them up, and they'll be interrupting as we get them. So don't wait until the end. Just ask them as we go. So I'll introduce the rest of the team in a minute. Just a little bit of background what we're talking about. So today we're talking about this award-winning installations KHON2, which is in Hawaii. Rachel and I wanted to do a bit of research and get there and see the site, but unfortunately weren't allowed. But this popped up on my LinkedIn as winning a bunch of awards. So I reached out to all the other guys who are going to join us on the call today just to find out more about it. And you'll know, if you've been to one of these Connect events before, it's not about technical specification necessarily. It's about really digging in and getting the expert view. So that's what we've done. We've brought this amazing panel together. And thanks to all of you for doing it. I've got John from tvONE. He's one of my colleagues. He looks after sales in the Southeast. Joe, who's the lead guru for the tech side on Neoti. Charles from Neoti. Alex from Digital Video Group, and Mac, Mac who's from FX Design Group. And we'll meet all of them in a moment as we go through. But all of you, thanks for getting involved as well. And you'll be pleased to know I won't ask you about where your weather is, so save a bit of time. So we work together as a team at NAB, and we put together this really neat setup. And at the time, I was really excited about it because you go to exhibitions, you just see one vendor working in isolation. Well, it doesn't really show you the full picture. So I was really pleased that we were able to work together and do this exhibition together. And we also did a webinar. So this isn't the first time we've been together online, so to speak. And then there's this award-winning set, and I'll just read out the awards it's won. On the new Newscast Studio Awards, it won the best set design, the best use of set technology. That's also Newscast, and it won a silver award at Promax as well. So it's a pretty neat little install, and you would have guessed it involves all of the vendors that are here on the call today. Now, before we get into this, I just want to give everybody a chance to get their corporate messages out, just so we can get that out of the way and just focus in on the tech, if that's okay. So I've got a picture of an install from each of the vendors, and I'm going to give them, I've got my clock here right in front of me, so I'm going to give them a minute to say about how amazing they are. So Alex, alphabetically your first, not only your first name, but your company name as well. So tell us all about DVG.
Hey, good morning, Mark. Thanks for having us. We're happy to be able to be part of the Connect event today. So Digital Video Group is a broadcast systems integrator and design firm. We're based in Virginia and have offices on the East Coast, but we do stuff nationally. Our clients include Fortune 500 companies, the largest station groups in the country, the federal government, and anybody else in industrial and stuff of that nature. So we partner with different companies, including Sony, Grass Valley, Neoti, tvONE to do system design, and build out for our particular customers. We work a lot with FX Design on sets for different customers where we're implementing Neoti LED video walls. And of course, we're using tvONE processing to power all the walls and stuff of that nature. And we look forward to working with people on future projects.
Have you been practicing, Alex? That was exactly a minute long. That was pretty good. You kind of raised the bar pretty high.
I had my little sand timer going. Had a couple of grain slops, so good. I'm glad that I was.
Let's see how well Mac does. Hey, Mac. Mac was you'll have seen on the social media post that Mac was a late joiner to this webinar, but it's great having you along, Mac, because I know FX Design Group was core to this install. So tell us all about FX Design Group, please.
Hey there, good morning or good afternoon over there. FX Design Group has been around almost 40 years now, designing sets, lighting, grid installations for studios around the country, some internationally as well. This project is Fox Charlotte, and it involves an LED wall behind the anchor there to the left, as well as several LCD walls. And there's still a combination of those going into the studios, but I do think probably within the next, I don't know, and Charles, you can chime in, 2 years max, I think almost all video will be LED video in studios because the prices come down so much. Story, we were working on a Golf Channel project, not the Golf Channel, but another Golf Channel, and we were doing a 15x60 LED wall, and this was about 10 years ago. And a 5mm wall at that time was running about $2 million. You could buy that same wall today for under $200,000. So that's probably the biggest thing is the prices come down, the quality has come up, the availability has come up. So I think LEDs are the future of broadcast video components in set design.
Awesome. And you're right. I mean, that's one of the things that I definitely picked on. Charles said, well, the first time we ever met was the price point has really come down, especially for Neoti. And it's kind of probably like 2.5 mil pitch now, something like that. Charles will get you the same sort of performance and price.
Is this my minute now, Mark? Do I start now?
Yeah. Well, I was giving you a few seconds extra, but yeah, crack on.
All right. Yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, at one point, well, let me go the other way around. Give you a brief introduction. So Neoti was established in 2006 as a digital signage company, and then that went really well until 2008 with the market crash. We had a little LED truck that we had been renting, intermittently before that. And then when the markets bounced back, we continued having demand for that silly little truck that we had. And then that's how we morphed into the LED space, initially as a reseller. But as time progressed, excuse me, we evolved into a consultative manufacturer, and we produce our own panels at this point for a number of years already. I've been with the company about 6-7 years. The values we espouse, I may not have even believed myself when I was saying it at the time, because it does sound cliche and banal and hackneyed, to say that, our core values are building the long-term relationships. We're not in it for the quick, short game. We like that long-term relationship, both with our partners, which is how we've, through the years come together as a core group of companies. Years and lots of tears, but we appreciate the same values, and we like that in our clients as well. We'll walk away from a project if we don't feel that the values align. And to speak about your question, Mark, specifically, yes, definitely pricing has moderated. It's become, the demand has increased, which of course drives down the price. The sweet spot now in broadcast is probably 1.5 millimeter, 1.8. That's kind of the sweet spot between budget available and moire patterns on camera. It's always been about striking that balance. In years prior, we had to put in moire filters to avoid moire, but that's now all changing. And absolutely, the next 2 years or so, I think it will be LED will be king.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. The challenges I had to set my wall up behind me today, you can see I've got my panels around me, and I think I'm just thinking the flexibility. I'm just doing a plug now. If I had a Neoti wall behind me, You can always ask, can't you? And lastly but least, let's introduce Jonathan. Jonathan's one of my buddies here at tvONE. I think I normally get to do this bit, John, so it's quite nice people hear tvONE from a different angle. So tell us all about tvONE.
Okay, well, tvONE's been around for about 35 years. We've been making these Choreo units. Oops, hang on a second. Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. We've been making Choreo units now for 10, 11 years, I believe. We are basically the controllers behind a lot of these walls. Using Choreo units allows for the creation of custom resolutions to create multiple independent walls on the set, which include currently LCD as well as the DV LED. We can also create custom windows where you can combine live sources with some custom-made graphics to give different looks for the wall. If you saw that very first image that you showed from NAB, that was a small banner that we ran across the top that was content generated that showed FX and DVG, and the content was below that. I've worked in conjunction with Mac and at FX and DVG with Alex probably for, I don't know, 9 years. So we've had a very close, good relationship. We try to give the best advice we can to what choreo, because there's quite a few of them, what would be the right choreo for the application that they're trying to fulfill. We give our best judgment assessment to everybody, get them to understand it. Mac has been dealing with, or FX Design has been dealing with choreos now for, I believe, 9 years. They're pretty well versed with choreo, as well as Alex and everybody at DVG. So we're there basically to make these sets look the way they do once the walls are up. And over the last couple of years, we've also been working with Neoti now as a newer DV LED wall, as we transition more away from these LCD walls to LED.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Now, I was going to hand back to Rachel just for a second. Rachel, I can't see if any questions have come in yet, but can you just remind people how they can ask questions, how they can get involved? Because this isn't just about us talking at you. We really want your questions to help steer this conversation as we go through.
Yeah, so everybody can use the chat box or the question and answer box. Just know that we're probably going to answer most of the questions towards the end of the presentation, but submit them all the way throughout and we'll get to your question.
Sweet. Let's get to the meat of this. I think, Mac, we'll start with you if it's all right. Yeah, this project was handled in the main by FX Design from the start. How did it start, and what were KHN02 trying to achieve here?
On the design side, they really wanted something that spoke to the island and the natural elements in the island, so you can see those in the design with the waves and the wave panels behind the screens. But then they also wanted to have the latest technology available to tell stories in different ways. So you have the background that we saw earlier behind the anchor desk, and I believe that's a 3.9 millimeter pixel pitch LED wall. It currently has an RP filter in front of it to diffuse it slightly to get rid of the moire. I think in next year, that same screen would probably be a 2.5 and cost the same without the RP screen, and be much cleaner and be more useful as a stand-up background. Right now, they can't really use it as a stand-up background due to the diffusion. And what is that, a 2x4 display of LCDs you see on the right, or 2x6, that will probably be a 1.5 LED millimeter pixel pitch, which in our tests so far, you can stand close enough to that to tell the story. We say maybe 4 feet away from it. And I think probably in 2 years, that'll be a 1.0, and you can stand right up next to it, as long as you can be backlit and tell the same stories. The meteorologists, they want to use that one for weather. Meteorologists don't like the lines from the LCDs because they typically fall right in the path of a storm or right in the middle of a graphic that's really important. So they'd like to get rid of those. So I think the first place we'll see more tighter pixel pitch is in weather centers, and then they'll move into the regular storytelling devices around.
What did KHN2 have before this? Was it more of a traditional set, was it?
I couldn't even tell you. I don't remember. I forget what those look like, but yeah, it definitely didn't have this much technology in it. That's for sure. Yeah. And you can see also, throwing it back to Jonathan, that 2x, and I think it's a 2x6 screen there on the right in the middle, is divided up by a choreo. You can see on the left, it's a scenic, in the middle is a second scenic, and the third, there's a map. So that's a choreo behind the scenes, sending those different signals to the screen. So Jonathan can talk a little bit about how that works, maybe.
Yeah, sure. And how soon did you get, because Alex, you bring the technology mix into this. How soon did you get involved with Alex? And then Alex, perhaps you can explain how the project went from there.
From day one.
In addition to doing the sets and stuff, we also do a lot of the other technology that's used at the station. So if you look at the picture with the cameras, the Q script prompters and stuff, we did all of that studio technology as far as the cameras and stuff as well. So we worked with the customer on the cameras, the set tech all at one time to make sure, going back to what Mac was talking about distances and stuff of that nature. So typically FX will partner with them on a project like this. They'll come up with how it's going to be laid out, and then we start figuring out the technology that needs to go in based on the customer's budget in order to do that. So the layout from the screens, whether it's LCDs or LEDs, etc., is normally done as just a layout of how it's going to visually look, and then at that point, we go in on the backside. I'm going to call it, and that's where the choreo comes in, because the choreo is basically what happens behind the scenes to make all the pre-pictures. It basically allows you to route images, to map images, to do settings and stuff of that nature. So that's typically the process of how we work.
And how soon in this project did you realize you needed a Choreomaster or Choreomaster 2 in this to make this work?
I can't recall a project where we have not needed a Choreomaster. So on any of these new set technologies, I mean, it's a crucial, integral part of the set design. It's tvONE, the product, the whole Choreomaster product. tvONE is a broadcast company. They're not like an AV company. So being able to have things like Genlock and stuff of that nature that are important to our business that may not be important to the AV business. It's a crucial part of the design. Additionally, this particular customer was running automation. So with that automation, we used a device from DNF Control in order for them to interface with the choreo. So when Muse was running stuff of that nature, it also automates changes and presets and stuff of that nature on the backside.
And I guess you spoke to John, and John, I'd just be interested. You talked earlier about it being about relationships. How did that conversation go? How did you get involved either with Alex or with the customer? How did you come up with a design for the Choreomaster?
Well, typically, Alex has a pretty good idea of what's needed right from the get-go. And Mac and Alex both explained the flow of this project very well. It starts with FX design, what this whole set's going to look like, and what their goal is for this set. And then DVG comes in and said, okay, here's the gear that we need to make this set do what we need it to do. And then I kind of get involved with, I ask a lot of questions of how many sources do you have, and what is this, what needs to go where, what are the resolutions, how many aux switches are going to be feeding us. So we go from there, and that kind of determines which choreo is going to be the right fit for the project, just by how many sources, how many layouts. Alex did mention DNF control. So when they're making changes and things on the set, that's actually sending commands to the choreo to go ahead and change presets, looks, sources to the windows. That's pretty much when we get involved in this project. Set has already been laid out. Alex already has somewhat of an idea of what is going to be needed and what is wanted to be seen on this set. And then we come in and just basically confirm or suggest what the right choreo is for the project.
And if I ask the same question, I guess to Joe about the LED, how did the conversation go with Alex about the LED, and how did you choose the right LED wall, the right pitch, the right specification from the Neoti side?
Right. So it usually just has to do with finding out what they want to do with their talent and how far in front of the screen the talent is going to be. And then the other factor then is how far away from the talent the camera is going to be. So those two distances usually gives us all the information we need to establish the pixel pitch. That would be perfect for the scenario. Now, a lot of times what happens is the pixel pitch that would be perfect for that scenario might not fit the budget. So that's the third factor in the equation. It's like, what's the budget? What would be the perfect pixel pitch? And that's why when Charles said the sweet spot right now is like 1.5 millimeters, the reason he says that is because that's the pixel pitch that we mostly use in these broadcast scenarios to meet all the demands of the budget versus all the flexibility needs they need to be able to handle the scenario. What I mean by that is you say, what happens when you go with a higher pixel pitch? Like, what's the problem? The problem is that the camera will pick up patterns of the diodes and create what's called the moire effect. It's kind of a undesirable like wave pattern going on. And the only way to get rid of it is if the camera doesn't see the individual diode pattern on the screen. And the only way for the camera not to see the individual diode pattern is to either defocus the screen a little bit or get a tighter pixel pitch or increase the distance of the talent away from the screen. So that's kind of what establishes what pixel pitch we go with first. We always start with what do they want, budget out of the, not even part of the equation. And then what do they have budget wise, and can we make all that work?
And you mentioned cameras there, and that's sort of a point I want to pick up with Alex. I mean, I've been to stations where they have kind of full fat cameras like this. I've also been to small stations where they have PTZ or PTZ cameras. I've seen a whole mix. And does the choice of the camera versus what you're trying to do on the LED wall, is that something you have to put into the equation?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly falls into it. A lot of people, just because of the cost of the PTZs, are going in and, speccing those and using them in stations and for news and stuff. Not always with the best results. Again, adding to what Joe says, you have to make, and what Max said earlier, you have to make sure that the distances work between the talent, the set, and the LED wall. Typically, in larger stations, mid-market, et cetera, the clients are going with a standard full-size camera. It may still be on PTZ, like in the case of Keihan, it's a full-size Hitachi camera with a Fujinon lens that gives you a better depth of field, and that's being controlled by robotics. So, and there are instances, like I said, where things are cost conscious, and people are using PTZs to the little small dome type, I guess is I want to clarify that versus a full size PTZ like this. But in that case, you just need to be careful because, like I said, the lenses aren't going to give you the depth of field a full size lens would in this particular case.
And what about? I mean, so I guess it's a question for you and Joe. Like, how do you manage brightness? Because I know, even just with standard screens, you can end up with too much light compared to the studio. But I know you can ramp up LED really bright, so you've got to balance that. And I guess I've also seen some LED kind of do some strange stuff when you dim it as well. So how do you and Joe work together on that part of the equation?
I'll kind of actually send that over to Joe and actually to Mac too, from a lighting standpoint, because you do have to take into account that the set technology, whether it's LCD or LED, is producing light. So that needs to be all factored in when you're doing the lighting, as well as shading the cameras, because that is another light source to contend with within the studio.
Well, let's start with Mac, and then we'll go to Joe. So Mac, do you want to talk about the lighting side of it first?
Yeah, I'll step in there. So what we do is when we light for the talent first, obviously, to make them look as good as possible on camera. And then we balance the LCD, LED, and other elements in the set. There's a lot of backlit set elements and puck lights and things like that. They all get balanced when we do our final walkthrough, so it's evenly matched. And I think one of the things that we found out, a lot of the LEDs initially had a very high nit rate, which is the brightness, and we're finding that we don't need that same nit rate. So we're probably hoping to be in the 600, 800 nit range, and a lot of them are 1,000 plus. So one, that'll help hopefully reduce cost. And I think Joe can talk to that, why the lower nit will be better if we're running a high nit at a low brightness. I think that's a bad thing for the LEDs, right, Joe?
Yeah, it's true. The thing is first of all, we need to understand that this is a one-time setup thing. You don't change brightness on the fly with these, and it's not something you do throughout the different studio set, changes or presets or whatever. This is kind of like you install the screen, and then you calibrate the whole thing with the lighting guys there and the camera guys there as a commissioning thing of the whole deal, and then you kind of set it and forget it. Our screens typically, like Max said, go up to like 1,000 to 1,200 nits, which is super bright. The cameras, it would just blow out the camera. Like you wouldn't even be able to see really the image or any detail. So typically what we run our screens at is about 20%, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but you find that sweet spot of percentage for the cameras. Now, to the human eye, it may seem a little bit dim. Like someone may walk in the studio and be like, why are your LED screens turned down so much? But you got to remember, in a broadcast setting, we're not calibrating the LED for human eyeballs. Like nobody cares human eyeballs. It's all about what's it look like on camera. So we kind of set it and forget it on a one-time calibration type of deal.
Cool. Now, before we move on, we've had a load of questions in. So let me ask some of these, because I think these are relevant what we're talking about now, and then we'll move on. I want to talk about, dig into moire a little bit and distances a little bit more. So, and by the way, when you're asking questions, if you give us your email address, we can come back to you and give you as much information as you want. Also, my colleagues on the call can all access this, so they'll answer your questions as well by text as well. So the first question is, I guess this is a Neoti question, probably. They have a limited budget. How many screens should we start with to set up an LED video wall?
Charles, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Well, the answer to the question is, what is the limited budget? What is that number? That's, when we have a number, we could discuss various different options. It's like, as Joe said before, it's a matter of, is there how much space is there in the studio? There are several variables that will go into this equation, coming up with the right product. Is A, what is that budget? B, how big, how large is the studio? How many, what's the floor dimensions? And then, can we get away with some diffusion filters in front of the display to, maybe go with a slightly lower pixel pitch with the diffusion? What is that tolerance level? Do we go with a 3.9 with a filter, say, half an inch away, or a 2.9 with filter a little closer? So diffusion is not as impactful. So there really isn't a clear answer for that question. Like I said, all those variables will play into the equation. And
sweet.
Can I add another variable in there to?
Yeah, go for it, Mac. Yeah.
Let's say, going back to the question about the distances and things, it's, what are you using that for as a storytelling device? Is it merely a scenic background like the screen to the left here with the scenic of Hawaii? If it's just a scenic background, you can go with a lower pixel pitch, or higher, a more spaced out pixel pitch, 3.9 to 5 max, I think, there with the RP filter. But if it's going to be like the screen here behind the weather desk, and you're going to need somebody up close to it, then it's going to have to be a tighter pixel pitch out of the box, 1.5. and maybe you only need one of those, or maybe two of those, two of those sizes. But that's really, number one, what's it for? And then how will you use it? And then the second part is budget. And then we try to find a solution that works for you there. And then back to the, the distances, this would have had to have been a 1.5 pixel pitch wall in order for them to use it the way they wanted to use it, which is currently out of their budget range, which is why it's the 2x8 or 2x6 wall. But I think, again, like I said, in a year or so, that would probably be affordable as a 1.5.
Sweet. There's another question that from Paul, and it's one of my favourite topics, which is about control, because you can have the best tech in the world, and if you can't control it, it's just static. And Paul's question, I think it's probably for Alex, possibly, but is there a way to add control and interaction by the talent to interact with the LED wall, like changing web pages, displaying, drawing them, or pushing off boxes? What are the options there, Alex?
Yes, so sure. I mean, there are multiple connections on the back of a choreo, so you could have presets and stuff that could be as basic as like a contact closure or a full, remote system for a choreo. So certainly the talent could do that. However, in most cases, in mid-market to larger market use, it's all going to be running off an automation system, whether it's Ross Overdrive or like Grass Valley Ignite, where it would just be part of the sequence that they would play out. But certainly the flexibility of the Choreomaster would allow you to do that. That would feed whatever sources and stuff need to be to the wall at that point.
Sweet. There's a question about warranty lengths.
If I could just chime in there on that one.
Go for it, Charles. Yeah.
The question was about interactivity, I believe. So we could, if I'm understanding correctly, we could add an IR 12-point touch frame as well over the LED display, regardless of size. It could be, right up flush on the screen, or distance, attached to a scenic frame over it. It doesn't have to be on the screen itself. And those are in use on several sets, on weather sets in particular. That does allow that that interaction with the talent, between the talent and the display, to most slide through graphics and like that. It's just another component of interactivity we can add.
Yeah, sweet. We've had we don't just do broadcast, we do AV as well, and we did that for an install out in Australia called the Cube, and the interactivity just drew people to the wall. It was like, it's everything. Yeah. But thanks, Charles. And the question about warranty length. My question is does warranty matter? The answer is yes. But how long is it? What do you get for it? How do we support people? But my takeaway about warranty is often about MTBFs as well, medium time between failures. So don't just fall into warranty lengths. But let's just roll around. Charles, do you want to start off? What's the warranty like? What's your support like? What's how do people get support for the LED? And I guess their big worry is getting a dead pixel on the wall, I'm guessing.
Sure. Yeah. So our standard warranty covers all parts and repair work for 2 years. That's the default. We offer 3, 5, and 7-year extensions. But how diodes are replaced, in the initial, most of the diodes that fail, they fail upon installation. That's when we notice most of those failure rates happen. What we do is we package every project with 10% spare parts. It might sound like it's a lot, but it's really not. Actually, when you factor in that LED is unique, it's different to LCD in that every batch that's produced by us has a slightly different color hue. So you do have to match. You can't just add a panel 2 or 3 years to the life cycle of the wall. So that 10% stays with you through the course of the set, through its lifespan. And when a module goes out, diode goes out, you harvest anything you need, whether it's a module, spare module, or an IC driver, power supply, you'll just harvest off those 10%. That module that needs repair work, that comes into us, it's repaired in-house stateside, and that's shipped back. It's usually about a 2-week turnaround time if it's in the States, maybe a little bit longer if it's overseas. But you always have that 10% to dig into, and so that's that answers the question.
Yeah, and I guess we go to John next. I mean, John, what's support package, warranty package, if people want spares, all that stuff. How does it work with tvONE?
Okay, so tvONE comes with a standard 5-year parts and labor warranty. We do have a support team based in Ohio where we will answer calls. I will answer calls any hour of the day or evening. We do have an advanced replacement policy, so DVG has access to being able to do advanced replacements if there is a failure. I will say that I think the mean time between failures on a Choreo is 100,000 hours. So usually once they're in the field, they're just going to run and run and run. We do have some firmware and software updates that we do every now and then, maybe for some new features, for some new cards. Those are free. All you have to do is go on the website, download the firmware, download the new software, and just load it to the Choreo. The Choreos are not a Windows-based processor. We use FPGA chips, so we can easily update firmware and software at will. It's never going to be looking for a constant, software update every 30 days. And also really have nothing to do with the warranty part of it, but from a latency standpoint, because of the fact that we're not a Windows-based processor, you're looking at about a 1 frame, maybe 2 at most, 2-frame latency. So it works perfectly on these sets.
Sweet. And Alex, you mentioned about the tons of peripherals around this system. Is that managed through DVG? How does that work?
Yeah, typically when we work on the system design, we work with not only the set company and the news director on the layout, but we're also working with the engineers on what I like to call the backside of how everything's interfacing. Again, mentioning stuff like the the Grass Valley Ignite and how that's going to be communicating to the other hardware. So typically there is more peripherals that could be added to the chain of equipment. Again, going back to Paul's question about whether talent could fire. Certainly, there are other devices that could be added to it, added to the whole system in order for communication to happen and fire the Choreo or make changes.
Sweet. When we started this session, when we were writing this and we got together like 2 months ago, I was afraid we wouldn't have enough content, but the questions are coming so quick. We're going to have to rush through the slides in a minute, and they're important questions, so let's deal with them. One's about expandability. So Mac, if you designed a station and they had a set and then they wanted to grow the set, how do you manage that? And then perhaps, Alex, you can follow on and just talk about what that means in terms of tech.
I think we'll need to bring Charles or Joe in on that one as well.
That's right, and it speaks to. Yeah. I started speaking to that earlier as well. So strictly speaking, the answer to that question, if I'm going to be blunt, is no. You cannot enlarge a wall after it's been installed unless there are additional panels available that were produced in that same manufacturing run. So again, the answer is strictly speaking no, but we've gotten creative in the past. This has come up. Either at a station that has multiple different displays. So we've harvested from other secondary displays from one wall, increase the size to the main wall, say for instance. Or what we've done is, we order our panels in larger batches. So say we have a station in Chicago and one in DC that came off the same batch. And DC wants to add increase the size of the wall, we'll swap the ones out in Chicago with a new batch and take those over to DC. So we've gotten creative in that way, but Yeah, you can't add just off the shelf.
Yeah. I'd like to add, Charles, if you don't mind, I'd like to add on to what you're saying, because we look at a couple of ways. The reason Charles is saying that is because when the LEDs are produced in a batch, all those are color matched. So that way you have your spares are in the same batch. So if you had a batch like in January of 2021, and then another batch that was produced in January of 2022, the batches would be different. So the colors may not necessarily match up. Okay. With that being said, there are some additional ways that could be done. An example, if you bought a 1.8 frame, if we did a Neoti project and we did everything in 1.8, depending on the frame and stuff that we used, you could decide to expand like 2 years from now and add additional frames, remove all the tiles and put in 1.5 or something of that nature. So there are some ways that you could, do something similar to what you're asking. But normally we try to tell the customer just to kind of plan ahead on the original and go with what they can. That's why the spares are included.
Yeah, I could add into there what we're actually seeing now, and it's like this again. I'll go back to this one. This 2x array, in a year or two, they might replace that with an LED panel, and that's an easy thing to do. So we're doing a lot of that now where we're replacing LCDs. We're actually getting ready to replace one here in Orlando. The wall is 5 55-inch monitors high by 7 wide. So 35 monitors, that's going to become an LED array here pretty soon. So we're replacing a lot of those, which I think is probably what's going to happen more than growing the LEDs. But like Alex said, a lot of the boxes will take different pixel pitch faces, so you can expand that way. That's probably going to be the easiest.
Sweet. I'm going to move on. It feels like we could be on this slide for the next several hours. There's so many good questions coming up, and there's more coming in, and we will come back to you. So if you've asked a question when we finish this session, we will print them all out and we will email them all out and get you the answers. I just want to pick up on something Joe said. I just want to understand this. I didn't quite get it first time. I kind of get it for a fixed distance. So this wall, we're talking about, there's a moire on the, you're getting moire pattern. So you put a filter over it. But this is where I'm struggling a bit, Joe, if you could help me. You've got this view where we got the nightscape behind them, but we've got another view where there's two presenters with different distances. How do you factor all of that in, or is it actually all the same distance?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is that in a shot like this, you want your focus of your camera to be on that talent's nose, basically right on her nose, right? Either one of them, both of them are about the same distance away, and then so that the LED screen in the background, you can still see it. It looks good. It looks clear, but it's defocused just enough to where that moire effect will not come into play. Now, what they'll do in the calibration process and the testing and all that is find kind of the sweet spot, and then they'll find what they call the hot spots. And the hot spots is sort of where the camera is, where the moire is going to happen, right? They'll find that, which is what would be considered the bad spot. And then they'll mark that sometimes on the floor and be like, camera cannot go here where X is on the floor, because that's where moire always happens, right? And so they'll find their limits, and with a tighter pixel pitch, so like a 1.2 or like a 1.0, 0.9 pixel pitch, which is super expensive, but if they had that, then there wouldn't be many hot spots at all. Like you could go anywhere and do anything with your cameras with LED in the background, and you'd be fine because it's so tight. But when you increase your pixel pitch to save money, a lot of times then you have to get creative with what to do with the cameras and where to position them and all that stuff. Does that make sense? I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I just one more thing. I've been looking at this picture for the last few weeks, and it appears to curve around the background, but yeah. I'm guessing you couldn't do a curve like that with LED. So how is that the filter showing in the foreground, or what's going on there? So
yeah,
I like
that is LED, and it's meeting up at an angle, and then there is an RP filter in front of it, right? And if you guys don't understand what an RP filter is, an RP filter is basically a thing that diffuses the picture, so it softens the image. It's literally like a shower curtain almost type of material in front of the LEDs. It's really close to them, but it's in front of the LEDs, and it defocuses them just enough to make the moire effect go away, and then you can get away with a little higher pixel pitch as your LED screen. They do that for budget saving purposes. They want a big screen, they want a big canvas, and they can't have moire effect, but they don't have a lot of money. So then the answer to that, phenomenon is usually something like an RP filter. Now, what's unique about this KHON one is that it's an angled RP filter. Usually RP filters are straight because they have to be nice and tight, and this one was angled, so it's really unique, and I think that went a long way towards the reason why this studio won awards for their creativity and stuff of the whole team just coming up with this concept. It was really cool.
I do want to clarify something that Mark said, just so there isn't any question. We could have done a curved screen, and we have done curved screen. This particular application, the budget just wasn't there, but it is totally possible to do curved LED screens. We've done that on a number of projects. So I just want to make sure and clarify there's no question. It's totally possible, and we've done it a lot in the past.
And I've just had two questions about this come in, actually, Alex. So one is you mentioned about RP filters, Joe. Is that something that is supplied as a Neoti accessory, or is there an RP filter manufacturer, or how does it work?
As far as I know, Mac, our RP filter manufacturer is FX. So Mac is better to answer this question.
Yeah, several companies make that. Anybody who makes a screen, so if you go into the movie theater, big video screens, so Daylight is one of the brands. There are several manufacturers of RP screen, and they come in various widths. So I saw somebody had that question. So if they want to send us, we can send them some manufacturer information. And going back to this one, it does come to a point there in the center. So they meet at 90 degrees. And if you see it, you can see a very, very faint line right in the middle. That's actually a piece of aircraft cable to keep the screen taut so that it doesn't belly in and create a big blurry area there in the center. And I don't know if you can put up the WGN set, if that's something you guys can do.
Yeah, no, I'll put that. That's a few slides on, and we'll
okay, because
get to that in a minute. Yeah,
its background is actually 1.5, so there is no RP screen, so they could see the difference in focus there.
I'll try. I think that's in a few slides. I'll try. Hope I put it in. And there's there's loads of questions about LED. It's obviously the topic at the moment. There's a question for I don't know, Alex or Joe, or and it's from Patrick. Patrick, no worries, you turning up a little bit late. This is being recorded, so you can watch the beginning later. But it's a question about, I think it's about mounting. Do you mount on a flat wall? Do you go onto plywood blocking? If you can use a curved facet, all that sort of stuff. How do you do all of that? How do you mount it? How do you do a curve wall if you want to?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We can do all that. And most of the time, the curve facets for budgetary reasons. Although we do have a natural curve panel as well that is bendy. It's literally like rubbery, right? It bends, and so that has magnets on it. And then if you make a steel, curved mount for it, then they just kind of attach to it. But most of the time those are very expensive, and most of the time the curve walls we do is a faceted curve. It's a real shallow facet. There is a maximum facet that we can do, and it's not that sharp. It's not that sharp of a curve. Matter of fact, it's about a 26-foot radius with one of our panels, and like an 18-foot radius is the tightest we can go with the other of our panels with a faceted curve. And at that radius, it's so shallow that it really looks good when the content is on the screen. It really looks like a natural curve. And there's loads of pictures and videos that show these that will prove out what I'm saying. But yeah, if you need to go tighter than that, our only option is to do the soft bendy flex panels.
And Mark, lower down in this slides, I think we have some sample photos of that in.
And I'll do is I'll get through the next few slides, and then we can perhaps find a couple of minutes to talk about it. There's still questions coming in. I'm just going to crack on for a moment. I just had one question about this. It's probably a Mac question. Why do they choose displays rather than LED for these walls? What was the decision? Was it price, or was it the look they were going for?
It was budgetary. Again, this wall in a 1 point, because this would need to be at least 1.5 for the way they want to use it. The price of that 1.5 was still, out of their reach. But if you look around the set, they have a ton of technology, and they chose to spend their LED money on that bigger seamless background. But for these, they would have both needed to be 1.5 to work the way they want them to work. And like I said, probably next year they could have bought 1.5, but last year it was just out of reach. But maybe in 2 or 3 years they'll update this and they'll change it all to LED.
Sweet. And is this the sort of thing you were using the Choreomaster for this?
Absolutely. You can see, if you saw it when it's wide, it's broken. It can be one big image, or it's broken into 3 images depending on what the story is. And Jonathan can tell you what Choreo is driving that to give them those multiple images. These walls, when you do the singles, can or don't always need a Choreo for a single wall, but when you get into these stretched arrays, you definitely need a Choreo to manipulate them.
So, John, do you want to just fill us in here about what the Choreo would be doing here?
Yeah, if I'm correct, I believe this one was a Choreomaster. There's the Master, there's a Mini, there's a Micro. I believe this one was a Master. It's hard to keep track. I think we're in about 400 sets, so it's hard to remember exactly which one we put into every set. Mac is correct. And some of the things, I saw a question that was asked is, what functionality does the Choreo serve? How do we figure out what that is and what the cost of these things are? So there's questions that'll go in, to discussions with Alex when it comes down to which Choreo it is. And not to get really technical, but we're going to find, we want to know how many different sources you're going to have, how many different windows you want, what are the incoming resolutions of those sources? What is my output going to be to the Neoti wall? Are they using 4K controllers? Are they using multiple 1080 controllers? That's going to deem how many outputs we need on a Choreo. And then I have to start looking at how much bandwidth is utilized. Every time we create a window, there's so much bandwidth that's eaten up. So I have to make sure that we're within our bandwidth limitation. Typically, Choreos can run at about 104% bandwidth without having any issues. When you go beyond that, you can start having frame drop and other issues. And then also, depending on what the incoming resolution is, what the window quality is, and how many windows there are. Again, not to get too technical, but there's a certain number of scalers internally in a Choreo that are used to create every window. So in the discussions on these, a lot of times I'll just use choreographer software, just build it if I can't edit in my head really quick, just to see where we're at. Have I pushed the limits of bandwidth? Have I pushed the limits of how many internal scalers we have? That'll also denote which Choreo is going to be used. Sometimes you can use a Mini and it may be maxed out for this wall and they can't expand on it. So we may suggest go ahead and use a Master, because 6 months from now, they're going to add another section to this set. And then all we do is add cards, input output cards, and we're good to go. Yeah, but I believe this one was a Master when it was done.
And I just like showing off. I've got my Choreomaster 2 behind me in the rack here. So that's the big daddy of them. So that's 10 times more powerful than Choreomaster. So it's a range.
I'm going to speak to this as well. This is 12 monitors making this unit. It can be one single image, like I said, a big scenic. It could be 3 images, which is typically how they use it. It could be 12 images. Say they decide to use it for elections and they want to report from 12 different precincts. That could be 12 different images, and the Choreo can manipulate all those. And if they really went crazy, it could be 4 images per monitor of, you've seen those really crazy weather ones where they're all over the place. It could, depends on the number of inputs and outputs you have in your Choreo to feed that beast.
So the way this particular wall is configured, each 2x2, the total wall is a 2x6. But if you break it down, each 2x2 wall is looked at the Choreo as one output. So we're using Philips professional monitors that can be set up and they can be tiled. So in this particular application, each one of those 4 monitors is set up as if it was its own display, but the Choreo sees it as one large canvas that could be divided into as many sources as you have inputs. So this particular one is using 3 outputs of the Choreo, and I believe there are 2 4 HDSDI input cards into it. So that's how you're getting the breakdown. But again, depending on the chassis, depending on how many cards you can add, it can be expanded for, you could conceivably have an individual image in each screen. You could have it broken up in 1x2s, or you could have it configured as it is right now in 3 2x2s.
Sweet. And I did promise Mac I'd get onto this slide. And Mac, is what did you want to pull out from, just briefly, because we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Let's go around the team. Mac, do you want to pull one of these out and just talk a bit about it? See if there's any, so we're not just a one-trick pony. We're not just KHON. We've done all these together as well.
The main thing here was just the different pixel pitches. So this in Chicago is the same setup as Hawaii, where it comes to a physical 90-degree corner in the back, but that is all 1.5. So there is no RP screen in front of it. These to the right are both WITI in Milwaukee, and that's 1.5 as well. And I will tell you that, we were talking about Moray and the hotspots. A lot of studios have fixed cameras. So if you fix that position, it's 99% of the time never going to have Moray. You're good. At ITI and a lot of other stations, they're still moving cameras on robotic pedestals. And we found those different hotspots, even with a 1.5. It's like, okay, when you truck through this zone, if you're trucking, you're going to get a little bit of Moray. Either move the truck line 6 inches closer or 6 inches back, and that Moray went away. So you have to work with it. But Moray really isn't an issue. And if anybody remembers Fox Thursday Night Football, when they first came on, they had a big RP screen in the background. They designed a Moray effect into their graphics package. So if they ever did get a little bit of Moray, you didn't really see it because it blended right in with the graphics. So Moray, it's an issue, but it really isn't. I mean, everybody sees Moray. If you watch any sports, if you watch any elections, you see Moray all the time. Everybody's used to it. It's not really a problem, but it's still in the back of everybody's head. Oh, Moray, but it really isn't a big deal.
And typically in a station that has the budget to buy LED and to do this kind of set technology is typically running robotics. So they'll just set the presets so that they know that shot has limited Moray in it.
Cool. And Joe, I guess you've got an intimate knowledge of all of these. You've probably spent hours on site putting these in. Any other nuggets from the LED perspective you want to draw out?
Yeah, 2 things real quick. That the curve there that you see, that is a faceted curve. Now you wouldn't know that's a faceted curve because it looks so smooth, and that's what I'm talking about. It's shallow enough of a bend between panels that it looks like a smooth curve with content on it. The other thing is that I know we talked a lot about Choreo with the LED screen arrays, but the LCD screen arrays, but it also is very, very important in these applications. For LED, I mean, when you have layered windows, I mean, that are positioned everywhere. So it's sort of like a picture-in-picture type of concept with LED that the Choreo handles for us. Because as you see, even with this curved screen and the daytime Chicago screen in the background, none of these are 16:9 aspect ratio screens. That Fox 26 down there, it's way wider than a 16:9 aspect ratio. But you don't want the circles to look like footballs, and so it has to be scaled correctly. And our LED controllers have some scaling capacity, but it's limited, it's basic. And so that's where Jonathan and the Choreo and everything, we just treat it like the LED screen is a canvas, and then the Choreo places the pictures on the right scaling and with the right amount of layers. So it could be one big image, it could be several little images, 12 different images, whatever the Choreo can do. That's where Choreo comes in with the LED portion.
Sweet. Right. I'm gonna head. We're on time, but I've got 2 or 3 questions I'm desperate to ask. So one was about refresh rate between LED wall and the cameras, so you don't get, you don't see flashing on screen, Alex. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I'll let Joe speak to that on the LED side, and then I'll add on once you get to the camera side. Joe wants to say anything. One of the things I do want to bring up is with the Choreo, and going back to one of my original statements, is it is a broadcast device. It's not a AV device. So we make sure that the units and stuff have Genlock with them to begin with. Whether we're using the Novastar as the secondary processor and then using the Choreo as the main processor, that's a key takeaway that needs to be done, since this is a broadcast application and we're not using an inexpensive AV device in order to do this.
Yeah, Genlock is the big answer to the question here. How do we handle? We try not to touch the cameras as much as possible. With our LED screens, they come at a very, very, very high refresh rate. So 3840, so 3,840 hertz per second is the number that we try to hit when we manufacture them. Just so it's high enough for broadcast. That's way higher than most LED companies, but broadcast is sort of our niche in Neoti. So we try to make that our standard. But we can adjust that refresh rate if need be, without trying to touch the camera. Sometimes we've had to adjust like camera shutter speed a little bit just to get them to really match up. But most of the time we do all the adjustment beforehand to take care of any kind of screen roll or whatever. But the answer to that question almost always is Genlock. So yeah, Genlock. That's the answer.
Yeah, and I guess in John, it's we in tvONE land we call it frame lock, but also on top of that is the custom resolution management as well, John.
Yes, and we have the ability to do a lot of manipulation of video content internally in the Choreo units. So we've not seen any issues stemming from a Choreo affecting the wall and the image.
Yeah, but to add to that, certainly on going back to the camera side, I wanted to make sure Joe mentioned the Genlock and discuss one of the advantages with Neoti is, yeah, with the cameras, you're gonna need to use some depending on what the manufacturer calls it, clear scan or whatever, in order to adjust the shutter speed. One thing to take into account is, especially on a set technology where you may have different types of set technology with different refresh rates. So you may have just like a LED wall like we have here, but you may have like a 86-inch monitor that is in portrait mode that is used for talking or anything of that nature. And then you may have a separate monitor on the desk. So it is important to be able to set your camera refresh rates. And that's one of the things that we look at on the technology side, is that we're not using tech that is a lot of different frequency, a lot of different refresh rates, where we can get rid of one roll, but it ends up in two other things. So that's one of the pre-technology parts that we look into on the design phase.
Sweet. Right, we're pretty much out of time, and I can see we're losing people. They've obviously got cups of tea or whatever's going on in their lives, and meetings and all that sort of stuff. So I want to say thank you to the panel, Mac, Alex, Charles, Joe, John. Thanks so much for being here today. It's been really, really interesting. This is what Connect Talks is about. It's about having these conversations. Also, thanks to Kim and Rachel. I'm really sorry, Rachel and Kim, I haven't come back to you for questions, but they've been rolling in so quick. So perhaps I'll have to do this again, and we can do more questions next time. There was one of the questions that came up is how to find out more, and just take a picture of this with your phone, or do a screen grab, or whatever you do. These are all of the various websites. So DVG's, FX Design Group, Neoti. If you scan that'll take you to their pages. They're really good websites. I'm not saying it because the guys are here, but there's some really good broadcast ideas on there that you can take from and put into your next project. I've been a bit cheeky. I've put a number of tvONE brands along the bottom, because we're not just Choreomaster. We've got the Green Hippo media server, which we've done some big sets with. We've got Magenta, which is signal management, so extension distribution, and then one rack as well. Let's just have a quick roll round, so just so everybody can say farewell, and any last messages, Mac.
The thing I wanted to close with is our next session, probably in about a year, 18 months from now, will be the next battleground, which will be LEDs replacing green screens in all studios. So that'll be your next big battleground, going AR, VR, and eliminating green screens forever, probably.
I agree with you. I've seen that, definitely a resurgence of that in the UK, and it's definitely coming, and we're preparing for it as well. Alex, any final messages from you?
Just want to thank Mark and the other panel members and the attendees in order to set in. It was always good to share information, and hopefully it was beneficial to everyone. And like I said, we're constantly working on new projects and new system design and integration, and we're lucky to have partners like you guys to help us with that.
Sweet. It was great. It was always great fun working with you, mate. Joe, Charles, from the OT side?
Yeah, not much. No, just this has been great. Thanks everyone for joining. I mean, working with you as partners has really made our life easier. You know, having everything controlled and sorted out upstream of our controllers it's made our workflow real easy and seamless. And like as Max said, the future is LED. It's definitely getting there. What we're doing as a manufacturer is we're just doing our very best to do the necessary R&D to stay ahead of the curve, come out with the best products, cutting edge, and just trying to keep our prices in sync with with the market, and keep providing the best service possible. And thanks everyone for the time.
Thanks, mate. And John, do you want to finish us off?
Sure, I kind of mean everyone's covered most everything. I do want to thank everybody that's been on the panel today. It's actually nice to hear all the information and technical things of from Neoti and how Alex does his and how Mac does his. And anybody that's been on this call, I would suggest feel free to reach out to anybody that's been on this panel. And hopefully we can help answer any questions you have as far as any applications that you're trying to handle.
Sweet. And my thanks to all of you. It's been really enjoyable. But I've been looking forward to this for about 2 months. I'm really pleased we got there. Thanks all for your time. I'm sorry we've overrun a bit. And if you're watching on this and recording, please pass the link on to your buddies as well, because there's loads of great knowledge. We're way over, so we're going to love you and leave you. Have a great time. And Mac, I'll put a diary date for a year's time for our next one, yeah?
Excellent.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for all your time now. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.